He's worse than Borges? His attendance record or no?
Well, Borges is good. Okay. Hey, that O'Neill thing is good.
Oh, that's good.
That should be the end of closed session, don't you think?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we're done with closed now.
Yep,
We just
we're
go
done.
open and we're out
Yep.
of here. Give them in. They'll come in.
All right, we are back in open session, and I'm wanting to convene this meeting before Supervisor Borges joins us, just so he can be late again. We will now move on to Council. Do you have anything you need to report out of closed session first?
There's nothing to report out.
Okay. Item number 6 on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes. This was from the board meeting of July 14th, 2017. Any questions or comments by board members or members of the public? Okay, seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Director Crocker,
Second.
a second by Director Mendez. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. You guys should be on the Tulare County Water Commission. That usually takes about 20 or 30 minutes to approve the meeting minutes. Next, we're going to move on to item 7, which is the SJVIA Director questions, announcements, and activity reports. Anyone have anything for the good of the order under this portion of our meeting? One thing that I would like to bring up at this point in time under SJVIA Director questions is I think that this board needs to be mindful of hopefully getting to a better financial position at some point in time. We each have loans from respective counties, and those loans are going to be repaid. But how are they going to be repaid? Who's going to get repaid? What amount first? What's the repayment going to be based upon? And also want to make sure that we have a formal policy. Once we get an amount that is above and beyond the incurred but not reported, that would be considered a surplus that we could then use to repay the loans that have been sent to each county. So I think we need to have a policy adopted by the board to see how that's going to be done in the future. So I'd like to direct staff to bring something back in the future. Okay? Anything else, board members? Okay. All right, we are now going to move on to item number 8 on our agenda, which is a request to receive an update from the Auditor Treasurer on cash flow projections. Lawrence.
Morning, Directors. Lawrence Seymour representing SJVIA Auditor Treasurer today. Can we pull up the presentation? Yeah, we sent it in. We sent it over yesterday. Did you need it on a thumb drive from me? My apologies. I thought we sent it over. Paul, I thought we sent it over yesterday.
Lawrence is on the website.
On the
so
website?
If you can bring it up on the
If you bring it up on the
website.
website. While we're doing that, I'll go ahead and begin. The one thing I'd like to point out is it's a pleasure to be back before you guys today. I'm only a guest speaker, a one-time appearance, and other staff will return to doing these presentations. But what I would like to point out is that it's a slight positive uptick in the cash flow and our projections. It's the first positive we've really seen as an entity in the last couple of years. It's not really drastic, but for the first time, that cash flow projection line is trending upwards out towards the remainder of this year. This is in part due to the fact that the amount of Sutter claims run out that we were predicting, hasn't been realized to date. Based on the run out curve, we would have expected to have incurred 90, perhaps 90% of the claims run out to date already from Sutter County, and we've only actually realized 68% of it. If that trend continues, that will be a positive trend of about 300,000 or 400,000 under the original estimation. And it's not a big amount, but it is some positives that are coming out of this. The other thing is since the last infusion of cash made by Tulare, and I think it was either late April or early May, you can see that the cash hasn't dipped below about $3 million, other than that one time in late July. And you can see that although not drastically trending up, you can see that projected trend line up and to the right, which is a positive. Okay. The other two slides really are just some of the details. We're tracking the run out on the entities that left December 31st.
Hey,
They are-
Lawrence, real quick, before you move on from
Yes,
the
sir.
graph, is there any way that we can get from the auditor's office in Fresno County for the SJVIA some hard numbers in terms of bank account balances? Because we see the squiggly line
Okay.
kind of trending upwards, but we don't really have hard numbers to match to that. I think that would be helpful just to even see, even if it's just the periodic listing that you're using to make the squiggly line. If we could see some hard numbers in a support sheet, that would be very helpful.
We'll add it to the presentation going forward.
Great,
I can
thank
tell you that we monitor it daily, and that
Okay.
information goes out to all the staff
Great.
and Keenan, and we haven't seen it dip below about 2.9 million in the last few weeks, even a month.
That's great.
That's where it's kind of hanging out. It's been as high as maybe 4 or 5 million based on timing of premiums coming in from entities and payments going out to vendors. So that's why it's such a steep curve, because
Yeah.
the remaining two entities make up so much of the cash flow that big influx of cash comes in, and then 3 or 4 days later we pay fixed costs.
Sure.
Okay, but we're monitoring it daily, and we can add some of those periodic numbers to this graph and give you hard numbers.
Okay, that's great. Director Maxey?
Quick question. So, along that vein, as revenues come in, I assume that the Fresno County is receiving revenues from Tulare County and Fresno County coming into your office monthly.
Correct.
So, with that monthly influx, it amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Not anymore. When there was 25 entities in SJVIA, yeah, the cash flows were close to the 100 million mark. It's more along the lines of 50 or 60 million. Okay, the Fresno County's transmittal average is about 2.5 million, 2.7 million. Paul, do you have a number for Tulare? I don't have it off the top of my head what their week premiums would be.
Yeah, about 2.4 a month.
2.4. So we pay biweekly. Tulare pays monthly, I believe, right?
So, as that money comes in, I assume there's a specific account that's set up that's SJVIA specific.
Correct. We actually have 2 bank accounts. The one account is used by Anthem Blue Cross to pay vendors through their provider contracts, and there's certain stipulations about the timing. So they have access to one of the bank accounts. So we transfer funds from the main account that we maintain control over. We put all our deposits in. We transfer cash over to that bank account as Anthem needs it to pay claims.
And it's my understanding that revenues that the county receives go into the treasury pool.
That's correct.
So I assume that these revenues also are going into the treasury pool as well?
Well, the issue was we used to have excess funds, and some of it was in the County of Fresno treasury pool as an investment. But as the cash kind of dried up, we basically have had to transfer it all to Chase outside the investment pool. Again, one of the accounts Anthem has direct access to, and they write checks to providers out of, and the other one is where we hold excess until it's needed by Anthem in that other account. But if we ever got to a point where we had sufficient funding to fund the entire IBNR, it would be this office's recommendation that we go back to putting some of it in an investment pool someplace and earn some interest on it. But the nature of the cash flows over the last couple of years, it hasn't really been feasible because we've needed the cash quickly and available in Chase to be able to move it from the main account to that one account that's used to fund claims.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Additional questions? You can continue, Lawrence. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I appreciate the questions. The feedback is beneficial because then we can add these elements and try to address them proactively in future presentations. So I appreciate the interaction. Moving on, like I said, we are actively tracking claims run out. Unfortunately, the 19 entities that left at the end of 2016, we've actually experienced more than projected claims run out to the tune of about $500,000. Now, I can say we see the claims on a daily, weekly basis. They are, if you will, drying up. The last biggest run out I saw from the entity that left claim was about 5,000 from City of Modesto in the last couple of days. Okay, so they're very, very sporadic. We almost see no RX stuff at all. That's completely been paid for it and run out. And, we're just tracking this. We'll continue to report it. Okay. On the next slide, you'll see some information on the Sutter County claims run out. And this is what I alluded to as we were pulling up the slide, is that on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see those 4 percentages, 68, 14, 7, and 4. That is the expected run-out curve for expenditures when an entity leaves, the claims run out. Okay? Those are estimates provided by Keenan and previous vendor Gallagher. So what we did is we took the entire IBNR amount and we projected it out over weeks and days based on that curve. To date, we have only actually realized 68% of the expected. So if we continue on that trend, we're looking to be about 30%, 25-30% under, which is, as you can see, it'd be a savings of close to $400,000, at least against projections. Okay? We continue to build the entire claims run out into the projection. Okay? So if it isn't realized, that positive trend will actually when we realize it, it'll be higher. Okay? And that really concludes my presentation today. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain.
Any questions? Nice presentation, and nice to see you back again,
Hey,
Lawrence.
I'm
Even
happy to
if
be
this
here.
is a one-time occurrence.
Kind of like a guest appearance.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Good job.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to move on to item number 9 on the agenda, which is a request to approve an extension of notification by the SJVIA member entities of their intent to terminate from 120 days, as provided in Section 9 of the participation agreement, to 90 days. And I will look over to Paul.
Good morning. Paul Nerlin, SJVI Manager. Members of the board, the item before you today is recommending that the normal 120-day termination that is included in our participation agreements is moved to a 90-day allowance. And the reason for that is, depending on the action that you take today, if it requires some of our participating entities to consider other options, it would give them some additional time to do so. And that is the reason for the recommendation today. I can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments from board members or members of the public? Go ahead, Senator.
Quick question. It gives them extra opportunity to figure out what they'd like to do. Can you
So
explain that further?
Right now, if an entity is going to be leaving the SJVI, it requires 120 days prior to the end of the contract year notification to the SJVI that they are departing or leaving.
Yeah.
The recommendation today is to reduce that to 90 days. So it really
I got that, but I'm trying to understand how that benefits them.
It benefits them because it gives them the additional time. If depending on the action taken today, if it's a significant impact to that entity, it gives them more time to do that.
All right, and how does that benefit us?
I think it's reasonable to do so, and the numbers that we're talking about are not as large as they once were. If we were talking about huge numbers, I'd be concerned, but these are fairly small, and the impact to us is negligible.
Okay. If there are no further questions
Move
or
approval,
comments,
Mr. Chairman.
I'll take a motion. I have a motion from
Second.
Director Worthley, a second from Director Crocker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. We're now going to move on to item number 10 on our agenda, which is a request to receive the consultant's report on the SJVIA mobile mammography vendor RFP, approve staff recommendation, and authorize the president to execute agreements subject to the approval of the SJVIA council and staff. I'll look to Borden.
Good morning, Borden Darm with Keenan Associates. You've also met Matt Sendersky from the last board meeting. He is our wellness expert, and he'll talk on this item.
Good morning, Board of Directors. As Board mentioned, my name is...
Move that whole thing
sorry.
up for the, there you go.
Is that better?
Yep.
Good. As Board mentioned, my name is Matt Zendersky. I'm a health management specialist at Keenan. My primary role has been working with the SJVIA in developing their employee wellness program initiative. I'm here today to bring 2 items before the board. Before I do that, I wanted to give a quick update of where we currently are at in our initiatives. We've had some programs that have launched that we're really excited about. The first 3 that we've had queued up, we've launched an employee wellness program interest survey for all the groups to give us some feedback. Currently, we've had 2,766 SJVIA members provide us feedback on the employee wellness program interest survey. which we're really excited about. We have a Walking Works Challenge, which is going to be queued up for September 28th. I think you're familiar with the Walking Works Challenge.
That's a tiebreaker.
It's a tiebreaker,
Yeah,
absolutely,
just wanna
from
point
the
that
spring
out.
one.
So it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really excited in the competitive nature there between Tulare and Fresno, so we're going to continue with that. And then we also have a Fall Health Trails Challenge, which is going to be a little bit different than the Walking Works Challenge, where it's going to give SJVI members, it's going to be more of an extended time frame. So instead of just a week or a day, it's going to be a 6-week challenge. And SJVI members are going to have the opportunity to track different trackable activities online, form teams, and have competition. So we're really excited about that. The 2 items that we're bringing forth today, the first one is that we've got done with our process regarding reviewing vendors for the mobile mammography screenings. 3 mobile mammography screening companies were compared and recommended a vendor for providing on-site mammography screenings for SJVI members enrolled in Anthem Blue Cross. It is recommended that Life Saving Images be selected as the mobile mammography vendor. And you should all have this, I know it's up on the board, the mobile mammography vendor comparison, which gives you a little bit more insight on why we decided to move forward with Life Saving Images. One of the things that we really wanted to take a look at is making sure that we provide SJVI members best-in-class services and programs for the Employee Wellness Program. And so if you take a look at some of the bullet line items here, it gives you a little additional. The previous vendor that SJVI used to do mobile mammography screenings used analog technology for the mobile mammography screenings. This new vendor uses digital. And to give you a little idea of what's the difference, if you or a loved one were having a wedding reception and you were hiring a photographer, would you prefer that they came out and used Polaroid cameras or digital cameras? And so,
Well, it depends on who you ask. There's some older colleagues on this board here that might only have Polaroids. So.
And is this a first or second marriage?
So I thought that would be a good, just to give you an idea, because I was like, when we called the vendor, we were like, well, tell us really what the difference is. And that's how he said, really, basically, if you want a really easy way to explain it, that's one to wrap your head around. Also, that there were no deposits, no travel fees, no minimum participant requirements, and whereas for County of Fresno and Tulare, no minimums may not be an issue, when we start to take a look at the smaller entities in SJVIA, we really want to make sure that if they want to have an on-site event, that we're willing to accommodate them for that. They can have the capability to bill through insurance carriers directly. They're a local company with presence in Fresno County. And then one of the reasons that we really liked Life Saving Images as well is they're endorsed by the Susan J. Komen Foundation, or Susan G. Komen Foundation, which, as we all know, is breast cancer awareness. And they have state-of-the-art mobile screening buses that they're really top-notch. So, Gordon, do we have to wait for them to vote on this? Ask them? Okay. So if you want to cue me up.
Yeah, so that pretty much concludes that, if there's any questions for us.
Any questions or comments from board members or members of the public? Okay, seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
I have a motion from Director Worthley.
I'll second it.
I heard a second over here from Director Magsiger.
That's
My
good.
hearing's
Take
pretty
it.
good in that left ear, so I caught that one. So, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we're going to move on to item 11, which is a request to receive and file the consultant's update on the SJVIA Wellness Vendor RFP. Gordon.
Yes, and again, Matt is involved in that process of the RFP as well, so he'll report to the board at this time.
All right, excellent. So we have started the RFP process for the Total Comprehensive Population Health Management for the SJVIA Wellness Program. That was submitted. The RFP was distributed by Keenan on 8/1/17. There was 8 vendors that received the RFP, and just for, I think it's Director Maxig, you made the recommendation for a local group here, Pinnacle. We did make sure that the RFP got to them. They did respond to the RFP, so just to button that up and let you know that we did get it out there. 7 proposals were reviewed by 3 members of our internal team assigned to the health management consultants as SJVIA. If you take a look at this handout that we provided, the scoring matrix that we used to rate the vendors is there. So if you want to take a look at how each vendor was rated, the length, what we looked at for each service, you have a document of that right there. The proposals were scored based on the 6 overall criteria and 40 specific program features criteria using a 5-point scale for each. After we reviewed the proposals with the team and our internal subcommittee, we felt that 5 vendors of the 7 we wanted to bring in for a finalist presentation. So what we are currently doing right now is we are checking their references, and we are going to extend the invites for 5 of the vendors to come in and do finalist presentations and demos. And so what we're asking for the board right now is an extension of the timeline. We did not feel that with 5 vendors that we wanted to fully vet and bring in. And I think you all know, if you've done these RFPs, a lot of times these groups can look excellent on paper. They're the best thing in sliced bread, and then you bring them in for their demo and their finalist, and then you may have a different vision of them. And so we really want to make sure that we do our due diligence in finding the correct vendor for SJVIA. So we're asking that we extend the deadline, and we are going to bring back our recommendation to the October board meeting, and then we're looking at the program to launch sometime the first half of the year in 2018.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I have a couple of public comment requests. I have a request from Jennifer Genser.
Okay, the agenda I have is different than this one, so I may want.
You want to speak on a different item, that's fine too.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have a request from Riley Talford.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. Yes, my name is Riley Telford. I'm in Fresno County. Yes, in regards to wellness, we'd like to ask that, and we want to increase employee participation in wellness programs. Currently, with Fresno County, employees have to take time off from work to participate in wellness programs, which is a deterrent to their participation. Now, I can understand the county's reasoning behind employees taking the time off, but to really increase the participation, we look for the county to make efforts to make it reasonable for employees to attend by either having the wellness services being taken to their work sites, or either offer transportation to wellness where the wellness services are being provided. If this is done, I think you would greatly increase the amount of participation by the employees.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional public comments regarding wellness? Please come forward.
Sandra Brock, same address. I don't see that the retirees have been included in this, and I think a couple of times at previous meetings I asked that wellness programs include the retirees. You're spending, or the plan is spending, more money on retirees probably than on your active employees with dependents, because all the things you didn't take care of when you were younger come and get you when you're older, and things naturally break down, quit working as well. I think it would be an effort well directed, and some wellness activities or support for individual wellness activities among the retirees would be money well spent. And as I recommended before, if you offer it and people don't take advantage of it, you could sort of do a reverse incentive where if they don't take advantage of it in some way, silver sneakers or some other plan, then they might have to pay for it. But if it's offered to them and they do take advantage of it, that they get it for free. None of these are very expensive. Haven't seen it addressed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I provide follow-up to that?
Yeah, sure. Is there? Let me make sure I wrap up the rest of any other public comment regarding wellness. Are you coming up? This isn't Kaiser related. I just want you to know.
The chairman, members of the board, I just want to say that we SEIU and our members, we welcome a wellness program that encourages positive ways to make us healthier. One of the things that was proposed for the last step of the wellness program was punishing people because they don't do their biometric screenings, or if you are a smoker, charging you a surcharge unless you were in some kind of cessation program. We don't agree with those things that penalize members. We should do more things like maybe offering gym membership discounts, other stuff to make them be healthier. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, I'll close public comment period and bring it back to.
Yeah, I just wanted to give an update regarding the public comment regarding retirees. We did send the Employee Wellness Program interest survey out to retirees, and we had them designate whether or not they were an active employee or retiree. And out of the 2,766 responses to the Employee Wellness Program interest survey, 7 were retirees.
Thank you for that information. Okay, this was listed as an information item. Council, are we able to take action to extend the item and allow for them to conduct finalist interviews? I think that's the request for the 5 vendors.
Why not delay this and take it up at the next meeting, and that way we have a date certain, so.
Okay.
Next meeting.
Yep, at the next meeting
Okay.
will be the recommendation to
Excellent.
take action. Is there anyone in favor? Can
So
I get a
moved.
motion for that? I have a motion by Director Magzig, second by Director Worthley. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. You want to make a comment?
Well, I was going to say on the retirees, I mean, the fact that you had less of a response is kind of, I think, to be anticipated. But one thought came to my mind would be, there's ways of doing it that are not expensive in terms of, again, getting a pedometer out to a retiree that connects with us through email or phones or something like that, so that providing them with literature or some suggestions on exercise programs like that. I mean, I could see some things that we could do that would be inexpensive, and it would be kind of on a as requested basis, something like that. Just a suggestion as a way of addressing that. 'Cause I think the concept is very valid. Obviously, as people are older, their medical expenses go up, and so whatever we can do to help alleviate that is worth some effort.
Yeah, definitely the message is heard, and we'll make sure to include them in the initiatives moving forward. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We're next going to move on now to item number 12, which is a request to direct staff to give 30 days written notice to Shimenti and Associates Insurance Services of the intent to terminate the agreement as provided in Section 4, Item C of that agreement. This is an action item. Paul.
Good morning, board members. Again, this is just part of the SJVI's continuing effort to reduce administrative costs where we see duplication or opportunities to do that. Shimenti and Associates provides a lot of the administrative services for the SJVIA, but they're different by entity. The recommended action would result in directly contracting with the companies underneath Shimenti. For example, Administrative Services, Inc. do retiree billing, COBRA billing, FMLA billing for some of our entities. Hourglass does the eligibility, the invoicing. Shimenti separately contracts with Tulare County for voluntary benefits. So this would reduce the cost from approximately $520 monthly to about an average of $441 monthly. So that's about $90,000 annually. So that's the recommendation. We'll take any questions you might have.
Every little bit helps. Any questions or comments?
Just a quick question. So you said, if I heard you right, $520 monthly or $520 annually?
Monthly.
So, okay. All right, thank you.
Any further questions?
And to clarify, if I did $5.20 per employee per month. I'm sorry I didn't say that. To be
Thank you.
clear.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Director Mendez.
Second.
A second from Director Crocker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. We're now going to move on to item number 13, which is a request to direct staff to give 90 days written notice to U.S. Script, Inc., DBA is Involve Pharmacy Solutions, of the intent to terminate the agreement as provided in Section 4.2 of that agreement, and I'll look to Rhonda.
At your last board meeting in July, there was a selection of Empire RX as the new vendor for the pharmacy program. And so what you see before you is having to give official notice to U.S. Script / Evolve is what they're currently being called, or Involve. And this would provide for the 90-day written notice.
Okay, questions or comments? Question / comment that I have on this item. This is just terminating the agreement. So we'll get to the selection of the next PBM provider in a later agenda item. So I'll save my comment for that item. But any question, comment here? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion from the board.
Move approval.
I have a motion from Director Worthley.
Second.
Second by Director Magsig. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. Now we're going to move on to item number 14, which is a request to receive and file the consultant's report on the SJVIA plan experience through June of 2017.
Thank you. I've provided all the standard claim reports that I've given to you in past sessions as well, too. But in respect of time and so forth, I thought to myself, I need to put an executive summary in there so that we don't have to go through each one individually. We can affectionately call that the Director Mendez exhibit.
Call it the Godfather exhibit. Makes it a
So
little
I
shorter.
thought what I wanted to do was basically, we've added 1 month of experience, the month of June. And so what's most important is how does this reflect relative to our surplus position? Was June a good month? Was it a bad month? What happened? So if you go, there's a chart on the next page. And it's basically the change in surplus position. Yes, perfect. Thank you. What we basically, and what this reflects is the year to date for 2017 through June. So at the top, I show you where our position was through May, which was the last report you received, where we noted, if you look at the bottom right corner of that January through May exhibit, we had about a little over a $2 million surplus position. Then the next section there in the middle basically shows this is the experience January through June, so for the first 6 months, and the impact relative to our surplus position. You can see that the surplus position went down approximately $786,000. And I know there's a constant interest, what plan, what entity had the impact. And so when you look in the change in the surplus position, you can see that it was the County of Fresno actually contributed on a positive direction to the surplus by $71,000. The County of Tulare had a high claim month, so it's $512, and the all other, you see we continue to bleed there a little bit with $345,000, totaling a difference of $786. Are there any? I can go through the reports page by page, but they kind of support.
Any questions or comments on this executive summary presentation that Godfather Mendez requested? Okay. Thank you very much, Board. Appreciate the presentation. Next, we're going to move on to item number 15, which is a request to receive the consultant's 2018 underwriting renewal report, finalize and approve 2018 rates and fees, authorize the consultant and the SJVIA staff to negotiate agreements and president to execute agreements subject to approval of SJVIA council and staff. Board.
Okay, thank you. So we've prepared the final renewal, and obviously it takes into consideration that month of June. So on a 12-month basis, one of the things that we saw was that the experience overall deteriorated. In other words, we had more paid claims, less premium, if you look at it on a 12-month basis. I prepared for you another executive summary, so I wasn't planning on going into the intricacies of, but on page 2 of the report, there's a chart there that I want to kind of go over. and share with you kind of what the rate action was. And I was sensitive to the board's direction relative to do we include a risk share model or do we not? And because the risk share model that would be implemented for 2018 would be a first year risk share model, in essence, what we did was we took the cost associated within the experience period, trended it forward, added margin. So whether to come up with a fee that would be charged to each county relative to that. So whether we implement a risk share model or whether we do not implement a risk share model, the renewal rates are non-impacting relative to that, because if we don't implement the risk share model, those claims just revert back to the paid claims total as opposed to being pulled out, and the risk charge that offset that wouldn't be realized either. Other things that we gave consideration to was there is a distinct difference in the dependent ratio between the County of Fresno and the County of Tulare. What that means is for the County of Fresno, about 43% of the employees cover dependents as well too. For the County of Tulare, it's only 19%. So when you look at how the reinsurance is paid, it's paid on a composite fee basis, which is one fee per employee per month. Well, what we did is we prepared the renewal in such a way that we would take those two dependent ratios into consideration. So even though it has the same basis, we adjusted for the membership in each because of the risk would be a little bit greater because of the more people covered under the County of Fresno than would under the County of Tulare. So we adjusted for that as well too. Since the board made the decision, another adjustment that was taken into consideration in the renewal, since the board made the decision to move forward with Empirics at the last board meeting, the preliminary renewal had a savings built into it associated with the minimum savings between the two vendors. Empirics actually offered a higher savings, so now the renewal was adjusted to reflect implementation of Empirics and the savings associated with that program as well too.
And real quick, Borden, just a comment on that. I know that we were kind of rushing the PBM change because every month that went on was less savings, right? One of the things that we were told at the last board meeting was that there would be no interruption or no disruption with Tulare County patients or Tulare County employees. But I know that our staff has done some analysis, and we've found out that there's going to be about 975 individuals who are going to be disrupted or forced to make some sort of change related to their PBM. And you heard a comment earlier that was made regarding disruptions and how difficult it is for employees to do that. We're looking at renewing here, and we're using some assumptions in this case. I want to make sure that we've really flushed out any impacts or these assumptions are really sound, because it made me a little nervous that we ended up having so many employees that were disrupted. And when I was reading through this agenda item, I know that we've talked about an EPO option for Fresno County employees, and we're assuming a 100% migration from the HMO to the EPO. And have we accounted at all for any potential switch from an HMO to Kaiser, for example? I just think the 100% mark may be a little bit over-optimistic. So I just want to make sure that we're really being conservative and careful, and that every assumption that we are making is actuarially sound as well in this renewal.
Right. I appreciate the concerns, and if you'd like, I can address those now.
Sure, go for it. That
Okay.
was definitely something that I wanted to bring up.
We are in the process of implementation with Empirics at this point. It is a painstakingly long process, and it gets into a lot of details. I did have quite a few conversations with the county emails back and forth with the county of Tulare, and some conversations too, relative to the concerns on the PBM and the PBM program in general. I think a lot of what sparked this is at the beginning of August, a report was developed for the county of Tulare, which basically showed the opportunity of savings associated with the prescriptions that were utilized for the entire 2016 year, and where prior authorization, where step therapy, and where quantity limits may apply. That was.
And can you explain each of those, please?
Yes.
Each of those three.
So prior authorization refers to the need to have, before a medication can be filled, it is authorized by the PBM. Step therapy is before you can have access to this medication, there are other medications they'd like you to try because they might be just as effective and most likely less costly. And then quantity limits, for instance, we wouldn't go with a new drug to a 90-day supply right away. We'd go to a lesser supply because we want to see if it's working for the individual before a larger quantity limit would be.
So the quantity limits doesn't say necessarily for every person that's on a 90-day supply on a given prescription that they will no longer ever be able to get the 90-day supply. It's going to always be 30. It's basically saying they have to try 30, see if the medication's working for them, and if it is, they could essentially go back to the 90-day supply if they chose to do so. Because every time that an employee goes to a pharmacy, they have to pay a copay. Right. And so if you're cutting a 30-day or a 90-day supply down to 3 30-day supplies, that's 3 copays instead of 1. So,
right. So
comment on that, please.
Yes. Your explanation is absolutely correct. That's not the intent of how we would implement the program, or not what our recommendation would be. And relative to the disruption due to the implementation of these clinical programs, very specifically, I've asked Empirics several times, if we do not put into place any of Empirics' programs, but simply mirror what is in place right now, is there any disruption? And the answer to that is no. There is no disruption. Also, this is an open formulary. Nobody will have to switch a medication. A different copayment may apply. And I think we identified that there were 801 in the SJVIA in total that would be impacted negatively. In other words, the drug that they're taking right now would have a formulary tier change to a higher tier requiring a higher copayment. On the same token, there was a little under 300 that would have a positive tier impact. So their medication would go from a higher tier to a lower tier, so they would be saving money as well too. That disruption is built into the program relative to copayment, relative to clinical care management programs and so forth. It's really in the hands of the SJVIA how we set up this program. My personal opinion is this: you could grandfather everybody that's in programs or has prescription drug programs right now, and say, keep it the way it is for everybody so that there is no disruption. And then you can say, you know what, going forward, for those that have life events happen to them, go with the recommended Empirics clinical management program. For them, it's not disruption. They've had a life event. They need a certain medication, and to them, the new program would apply. So from that perspective, there would be no disruption on a clinical basis.
I like that. Thank you for bringing that up.
And
so wait, on a quick question. Quick question though. Tulare County did a study, and they indicated that by us going this route, 900 some odd employees are going to be impacted. So I'm curious to know, because if that information's true, then it's running counter to what we're being told right
Well,
now.
it's broken down based on the three different categories of change, whether it's a step therapy, whether it's prior authorization, or if it's
Quantity
the
limits.
quantity limits. So there was going to be some element of disruption in each of those categories. But if we're able to, let's say, grandfather in, that's one issue that will limit some of that. I think this was just an analysis done if it was just adopted without any changes or discretion allowed. So the answers that I'm getting from Borden seem to address those disruption issues.
Yeah. I think it's one of the reasons last month you saw in public comment, I mean, it was the open formulary. Formulary was an indication, don't change my drug.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the same token, that resonates loud and clear. And as we go through implementation, as you can imagine, it's almost, well, it seems like I'm having several meetings each week, but then we have with SJVIA staff, we're having meetings biweekly, I believe. And different programs will be addressed. And I've asked them to prepare in advance that they have what we're going to be reviewing this week, what the current clinical care program is under Involve Prescription Solutions, what their recommended action is, and also how many people for County of Tulare and how many people from County of Fresno, based off of the data we've had, would be impacted either way if we did mirror, if we didn't mirror. Because at some points you might not have anybody in a program, could be, so why not adopt it rather than grandfather nobody?
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Any further questions on this? But you can go ahead and continue with the presentation, Borden. Sorry for interrupting.
I had a second question, second comment.
Okay.
Apparently he didn't need an answer, so just keep going.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No. I was happy with that, but I did ask the additional questions.
Yeah, you did ask something, and it wasn't PBM related, so. Oh, yes, migration.
Yes, on the percentages.
Within a couple of days of me sending the migration, first of all, one thing we do know, we're going to have 100% disenrollment from the HMO. That enrollment for County of Fresno was deemed, they'll just move over, because at that point in time, we're looking at kind of some of the goals of the program where, if there's no real plan design change outside of capitation, which is really neutral to the employees and their dependents, and the PBM change, which is going to impact all plans anyways, that if the plan design is the same and the cost is about the same, then those people would most likely that are in the HMO would simply move to the EPO. I recognize that, what you have before you is Kaiser came in with a renewal option that is negative or rate decreasing. So yeah, we might have some. But in the same token, first of all, the numbers will hold up with a plus or minus 10% movement from what's projected. And if I had it to do again, I probably would have said that we probably would have a 90% migration into the EPO, and probably I believe we're going to pick up some lives from the PPO 250 plan that will move into the EPO as well too, and then there might be some migration from Kaiser to us as well in the EPO. But it's within that 10% realm, so I wasn't too concerned about it. But you're right, 100% might be overly optimistic, but it's within reason relative to how we establish the rates.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the comment.
Okay. So getting back to my chart, we'll go over the self-funded medical program. Obviously, these are different numbers than a month ago, and unfortunately, for County of Tulare, there's a bump because of the plan experience. Relative to the EPO, the action would be a rate pass for the County of Fresno, County of Tulare does not have that, so there's not a renewal, but there's a new rate. New rates are available for them that we'll get to later. And the all others, one of the things that we did do is immediately after the last board meeting, one of the comments that I made was, for groups that are this size, it's not reasonable for them to have a $450,000 pooling level and stay on their own. So we were able to, looks like we're going to be able to secure, it's not secured yet, but it's $75,000 level. That's what this takes into consideration, so that we hopefully they won't have the big bumps. But even with that $75,000 pooling level in place and those claims pooled at that level, they're still looking at, on the EPO program, a 36.8% increase. On the PPO and the high deductible health plan, County of Fresno would be looking at a 12.4% rate increase. The County of Tulare, 3.3%, and all others, 4.5%. And I want to make a point here as well, too, because with the all others, if we had one of the entities that are impacted by the large EPO increase say, well, we're just going to cancel the EPO and we're going to go to the PPO. Again, it's at plus or minus 10%. If we have a migration of more than 10% going into that program, we have to re-rate it. Because if you look on an overall basis for the all other, it's 25.1. So if the two entities that did have the EPO and said we're going to cancel them and just go into the PPO, the rate would not be 4.5. It would be closer to 25.1 or most likely a little higher. So there would be rate action taken based off decisions that would come, and we would have to come back to the board relative to that.
And I appreciate the independence of County of Fresno, County of Tulare, and the no risk sharing. But one aspect of it I just want to make sure of, and that's the stop loss, because I think that there's different stop loss thresholds that might be appropriate in a Fresno County versus what's appropriate in Tulare County, right. And we weren't able to secure that. So that's the one area where we were not independently rated.
So that request came early August.
Okay.
It just wasn't sufficient time. We already had our regular review of the reinsurance program, which is done not in hindsight, but typically the reinsurers don't want to bind coverage until 90 days prior to effective date.
Okay.
So that's not till mid-December and January. So we come back with that recommendation, and within the renewal that we have here, as is custom, we have a number representative with a little bit of trend increase and so forth on the reinsurance program currently in place. We will come back with that recommendation. The assumption is that we're basically trading claim dollars for reinsurance levels. So on an overall rate impact, we'll show you the specific rate impact that it would be, but in the same token, the recommendation is, you've renewed the plan, and we'll work that forward as we look at that. So in our renewal request for the reinsurance, we've asked for levels all the way from 500 down to 250,000 for various, and we've asked for them for the SJVIA in total, and for each of the two entities, County of Tulare and County of Fresno, separate as well too.
Okay.
So we'll see what we get there. I will say this, that again, and I think the risk share model, I don't think there's anything that needs to be done today because it's not rate impacting, but we will revisit that risk share model with updated information as well too. And I bring that to your attention simply because of this. If we find the reinsurance market to be a hard market, meaning that the cost of coverage for certain levels is at an additional premium simply because, it can be a hurricane, because these reinsurers are involved in everything. It doesn't have to be medical related or anything like that. If it's a hard market, typically what you want to do is you want to see how much risk am I willing to take on, and that's where that risk share pool might benefit the two counties. If it's a soft market, then we don't need a risk share pool because we know that the reinsurance market is competitive. They're competing for your market share, and at that point in time, we should be able to get what we want.
Okay.
So we'll prepare both of those options. But I hope that explains kind of the reinsurance approach, the risk share approach that we took to this renewal as well, too. I did want to share with you that within
What the hell happened to it?
within these renewals, we have 3% margin across the table, as well as we have what's considered a change in IBNR. The change in IBNR does not fund necessarily your existing IBNR liability. It tells you what the increased liability will become, or what the decreased liability will be relative to what the IBNR is. So from that perspective, it does add a component to either fund or decrease that. And so the IBNR and the margin reserve combined is at 3.4%, which means it's just under 2.9 million is the IBNR and margin that's built into this renewal. Last time we talked about if you were to pass just plain old rate pass to, I would say, County of Tulare and County of Fresno. All others, I think, should stand on their own still with the full intent. That would be reduced to 1.2%, or just over $1 million. The caution there is that if you were to do a rate pass, obviously the amount of margin available for claim fluctuation has decreased. It's not built into the rates. And the same thing, that you would be increasing your IBNR limit, but yet not funding it in the rates that are being presented before you. So just that word of caution too. Is there any other questions on the self-funding component? Then I'll go into Kaiser. Kaiser has offered a rate decrease, and you can see 4.8%, minus 5.4%, and minus 4.8% for all others. One of the areas that the board may want to consider, and I know I'm sure there'll be public comment on this, is basically one of the things we've tried to do is create parity between the EPO and the PPO. On the one side, we have County of Fresno having a rate pass on their EPO. Again, if we have a rate decrease on that side, it could encourage migration to the Kaiser plan once again. If we held rates where they are, and one of the things that's different this year, where last year Kaiser said, we'll hold those surplus positions as you adjust rates to maintain parity in cost. This year, the SJVIA would be holding those funds. So if you were to charge the current rate, pass on the reduced rate to Kaiser, the difference would be held by the SJVIA. That amounts to about $900,000 in total. So something to give consideration to as well too. I think it's, and especially if you look at the past reporting that I've provided, it was the Anthem HMO that essentially really drove a significant portion of the deficit that you came in. A lot of that had to deal with the anti-selection, people migrating to Kaiser over time as well too. So it makes sense that, or to me at least, it makes sense that perhaps part of your solution is Kaiser giving back some of that selection factor in this capacity. But that's for you to decide, and it's just a recommendation there. On the dental, any other questions on Kaiser before I move on? On the dental, the PPO is the recommended, it's a rate pass for the year. You're fully insured with Delta Dental on that. Because of your premium surplus position with them, which is about $837,000, they've offered a holiday for the month of January. What that means is rather than the SJVIA remitting premium for the dental program, they will take from the premium stabilization reserve that amount and pay the premium for that. In addition, that's worth a little over $300,000. My point to that was, well, that puts our premium stabilization reserve at 500, and we haven't gotten an update since May 31st relative to the PSR position. We've asked for it. Hopefully they'll account for one for us soon. But I believe it's still growing. Ideally, I think that money is better positioned with the SJVIA, given its current circumstance, than Delta Dental holding on to that. We shared that with Delta Dental. We asked them, we want to run this thing down. And we've kind of run into a wall where they said, no, we want that at $500,000. We don't want to go below that. And so it's kind of, the message that is being given right now is, if you wanted to self-fund, you're going to have to leave that $500,000 in place. I believe that what I need to do is further work with them and say, it doesn't make sense for the SJVIA to leave that money on the table. We need to run it down. So those will be further discussions outside of renewal. But within the renewal, our recommendation is to accept the rate pass. We were able to reduce a billing rate reduction of 2%. So the actual rate itself that will be sent on will be 2% less. They're going to take 2% out of the PSR as well, too. So that does transfer. It's not even $100,000, but it does transfer money back to the SJVIA relative to that for the next year as well. And then VSP is requesting a 7.5% rate increase. It is justified. If anything, we can go back to the plan experience, or you can look at the plan experience on vision and see that, yeah, claims have been running high on that program. They did offer two other alternatives to that. That 7.5%, in order to pay the higher claim costs, which was over 100%, surprise, they use their IBNR reserve to pay those claims. And so they need to replenish that, and that's estimated to be 5%. And so the 7.5% includes funding of 5% to reestablish the IBNR reserve. They provided other options, which are 4.2% and 2.0%. The 2.0% rate increase means that they have not reestablished their IBNR, and we've just basically pushed that out 2 years. These are all 2-year rate guarantees. On the 4.2, there is a IBNR buildup. I believe it's either 2 or 3%. I'd have to go back and check. But there's a partial buildup of what is required, so they'll partially build up the IBNR. So it's really at the pleasure of the board. This is fully insured coverage, so it's their risk, not yours necessarily, as to what you would like to do with the vision program. County of Tulare, County of Fresno, and City of Ceres are in that program.
Borden, on both the dental and the vision, the reserve reductions that are suggested or recommended by either you or the provider, are those sound reductions? Are those actuarially sound?
So first of all, on the Delta...
And conservative approaches.
Right. So first of all, the PSR on the Delta Dental, that's in addition to fully funded IBNR. So imagine the SJVIA with fully funded IBNR, and you've got a nice margin built out on top of it. And they're messing with a margin component only. The IBNR is funded.
Okay.
And then on the vision, it's their risk. It's not your risk. If you were to determine that you're ceasing your program with them, it's fully insured. They've taken on that risk. They're going to eat about 5% of the cost. So it's really a matter of spirit of cooperation and partnership with them relative to the renewal that you choose relative to it. Personally, I have no hesitancy in taking the 2%, given the situation we have. Let's see what the experience shows over the next couple of years. and let's dive into the utilization as well too, and work with them. I think,
Thank you.
you know,
Does that conclude your presentation?
it does.
Any further questions or comments from board members?
I'm glad he's done.
All right, seeing no questions or comments from board members, I do have some public comment requests. First, Jennifer Jensen. Your N looks like an R, just saying.
I know I have terrible handwriting. I do better on the computer. My name's Jennifer Jensen. I'm from Fresno, and I would like to comment on something that I have heard commented on a couple times this morning, and that's a migration rate. We feel that 100% migration is not a realistic number. And at during our HVAC meeting, our Fresno consultant had discussed 90% migration being a more realistic rate, with 10% going to either a PPO or Kaiser. And we would like to see the figures for the rates based on a 90% migration so that a more realistic decision can be made. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I also have a request from Ocio Segura. It says 15.
No,
if you don't want to speak, you don't have to.
Don't feel obligated.
And you're not wearing your Kaiser shirt today either, just saying.
This was free, so. Hi, my name is Ocio Segura. You guys know me very well in Fresno County. I just want to speak up on the Kaiser issue. Last year, when we were in the same boat, Kaiser came in at a lower rate. And in our wisdom, we said, okay, well, let's help out Anthem. And so we paid a surcharge, and we increased the rate so they'd be equal. This year, we're in the same situation again. Kaiser's coming in lower, yet they're saying, well, let's bring it up again so we can make money. When are the Kaiser people that for years and years paid the higher rates going to get a break? I mean, what are we going to tell members? Oh, they had a decrease, but the people up there in their wisdom decided to charge them more because they want to make money off of it. It's got to stop sometime. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have a request from Bobby Bloyd.
Good morning, Board. Bobby Bloyd, Fresno County Health Benefits Advisory Council Chair. I would like to personally thank the consultant for clarifying some of the confusion that was occurring. Unfortunately, that was causing some destabilization on previous discussions and agreements we had in the Fresno County Health Benefits area. So going forward, we fully support the EPO option. We support the new prescription benefit plan. And we're looking forward to try to help out and restabilize the SJVIA going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. I next have a request from one of the signers of the Constitution, John Adams. And you can use either microphone.
My name's John Adams. I'm with Fresno County Department of Public Works. I was at your board almost exactly a year ago, and I presented, and we can put these on the overhead if you'd like to see them again, on the employer's contribution in Fresno County as opposed to the employee's contribution over time. Characteristically, Fresno County has contributed a dollar amount, a certain dollar amount towards employees' health care. What we're suggesting, and what I suggested a year ago, was that be at a percentage rather than a dollar amount. Now, in the spirit of challenge, you talked about the wellness. I would challenge you to meet the percentages that your compadre should be looking over here. Tulare County, they were at 86% contribution towards their employees versus Fresno County, which was down at, for family coverage, I'm looking on the chart here, 41%. For individuals, it was Tulare County was at 86%, and Fresno was at 73%. So in the spirit of challenge, I would challenge the County of Fresno to meet the percentages that Tulare County is offering their employees. On a separate note, if you had mentioned the prescription, and if I can give you an example. I have a maintenance prescription that I use for a 30-day, and it's a 30-day prescription. I pay a $20 copay, and I asked the pharmacist, okay, well, if I wasn't under the insurance, what would this prescription cost? And it was $160. So I thought, sweet, that sounds pretty good. That's what my insurance premiums are paying for. Now, if I went to a 90-day, I actually pay, there would be 3 copays, but I only pay 2 copays. So I pay $40 for 90 days. So I save $20 on copays. So it's just to give you an example on when you go to the EPO and your prescription things to think about, that they allow the 90-day prescription payment. On VSP, I compared what was being taken out of my check as opposed to what they were paying. I wear contacts, so my costs are not that much, but sometimes, occasionally I get glasses just to wear when I'm not wearing my contacts. In any case, I found it to be a wash on what VSP pays out and what I'm paying in as an employee. So I just wanted you to kind of think about that. You might want to look at some of the other vision plans or something, because it's almost, in my view, VSP is almost like AFLAC, where it's basically you're just putting money into the bank, and then if there's some sort of payout, they pay out what you've put in there. So anyway,
Thank you.
That's why I wanted to share those with you.
Thank you, John. Any additional public comments this morning? Use either.
Hi, Sandra Brock again. I was pretty shocked at the 12.5% increment and additional premium that would be due for high deductible PPO participants in Fresno County. The experience report that we saw in an earlier item showed that the high deductible PPO plan was cash positive. It was one of the few elements of coverage you offer that the claims were not exceeding projections. So unless the first half of the calendar year was financially disastrous for that plan, I'd like some explanation of why, and why Fresno County is 4 times as high, roughly, as Tulare County's increment, because that's coming out of my pocket, and it looks like it's going to hurt. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion and or action. Any further questions from board members for the consultant? Staff have any comments?
I have a question, if you wouldn't mind me asking.
Go ahead.
I think it's an important issue to make sure the board understands and we as staff ask. So inherent in the renewal are pharmacy benefit manager savings. And the way that was calculated, as I understand, is it's 75% of the projected savings. There's been some discussion today about clinical savings, that if we don't participate in the recommended programs, there's a guarantee from NPRX. My question, Born, if you just answer for the board, in addition to that, there's fixed cost savings and there's RX rebate savings. And so if the SJVIA does not implement any clinical programs, will that impact the other savings that are part of the rates that are before the board today?
I have a chart that's on here. Is it just the only file? Yeah, just the first. Yeah.
Do you have something more thorough than an executive summary? Godfather Mendez is asking.
I've got another chart. Thank you, and I appreciate it. And this was shared with the SJVI staff since the last board meeting relative to how the savings are shown. You can see a chart before you. The first, and this is the empiric savings. If you read down the rows, there's a fixed cost savings over what involve prescription solutions offered. There's a higher prescription drug rebate that was offered as well too, and then you see the clinical programs. The first column with numbers is based off the maximum clinical guarantee. In other words, if you went through and you provided a lot of disruption to a lot of folks, you'd save about $400,000. They would be willing to guarantee a greater savings of about $400,000 than the next column, which is projected savings with minimum clinical guarantee, which is $1,850,000. The $3.5 million is what was used in the renewal. However, we weighed it at 75%. So we didn't give the full credit in the renewal of what the projected savings would be. That's the third column, which shows that the savings used in the renewal was a little over $2.6 million, and the difference being from the minimum to what was used about $887,000. We did that in an effort to be conservative. To Paul's question, there's no impact relative to clinical implementation to fixed costs. And on the prescription drug rebates, those prescription drug rebates were calculated based off of the 2016 utilization of the SJVIA. So in essence, it's mirroring the current program. So there would be no adjustment if you mirrored it. If you put some clinical programs in place that are new, that could have an adverse impact because it'd probably be more to lower costing drugs, to generic drugs as well too, which really aren't prescription drug, aren't rebate eligible. So, but those numbers hold up relative to the renewal as well too.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Board. Any further questions, comments from staff?
I wanted to make sure we're clear. So as I understood it from the presenter, that he was comfortable on the VSP with option 3, which was the lesser amount.
Yep.
So that was a recommendation to us. Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Rhonda.
Actually, that's what I was going to comment on and just give some history in that the last 3 years we've had 0 increases for vision in our rates. And so the 7.5%, when you think the last 3 years we haven't had any increases, is probably not that outrageous. But what I'm hearing is that we have sufficient funding that 2% is not going to hurt us over and it's a 2-year guarantee, I understand?
Correct. It's not that we have sufficient funding.
I said we, but I meant in the vision.
VSP is on risk. They've basically said, look, we want to partner with you. We'll offer 2%, but we want you to know that we don't believe that will fund any of your IBNR. And so in subsequent years, at some point, they're going to have to fund it. We're delaying it out potentially 2 years.
Okay. Any further questions from board members?
I was going to make another one quick comment, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the fact that we had a bad month in June for Tulare County, but I think it is what it is, and I appreciate the fact that we are taking that into consideration as we come forward with a proposal. We don't want to ignore it, and if it turns out to be an aberration and it was high, well then by establishing a higher rate, we're just protecting ourselves and we want to be careful that that's exactly what we do. Make sure we have adequate revenues coming in to handle the claims, and recognizing at some point we need to rebuild our reserves and IBNR sums so that we can at some point start paying back the counties for what they've loaned. So I'm comfortable with going forward with the recommendation. It is what it is, and I think it's the prudent and conservative thing for us to do.
Senator, are you thinking, or do you have something to say? You were kind of leaning in.
He's got nothing to say.
Okay.
I think then the only issue before us is if we are going to accept the chart as presented, or if we are going to hold Kaiser at a 0 instead of a negative. That's really the issue, and it's mainly Fresno County has to decide because it's the majority of our members. I think that's what it's going to come down to for us. Any comments or?
Comments from Fresno County supervisors? No? Okay. Chair will entertain a motion if there's no further questions or comments from board members.
That was an executive summary.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
What do you want to do?
Make a motion to approve.
As presented?
With the 2% on the VSP.
Yeah, option 3 for VSP.
Option 3 VSP, but what do you want to do on Kaiser? Keep it at 0? Or go with the recommendation of negative 4.8 for County of Fresno, negative 5.4 for County of Tulare?
If I might just interject, because it does really affect you all, not us, but the justification had been in the past that your healthy people were heading to HMO, to Kaiser, and you're leaving behind the bigger claims behind, and that because people wanted to stay with their doctors and stay with their programs and so forth, and they had chronic illnesses, so your expenses were higher in those areas while you're not getting the benefit of people staying with you, what will now be your EPO, and leveling out that expense. You're being left with higher expensive people. So that would have been the justification for retaining some of those monies, because in a way you're being penalized by having your healthier people migrate.
Migration.
Yeah, and so, Board, I'm curious for you. I think as our consultant, even though they came as a negative, you should have come forward and said we should have held instead of present a negative. You know, if the issue is the migration issue, and if that's a concern, then as our consultant, I think you should have come forward and recommended a 0 rather than come forward and present a negative. Well, that's my personal opinion. I mean, but if you're not worried about it and we're going to go negative and you think everything's fine, then that's fine too.
No, let me restate.
Because, I mean, yeah, oh yeah, because, I mean, you say it right here. To maintain parity between the EPO and Kaiser, the board may want to consider retaining the 2017 rates for Kaiser for 2018, yet your chart shows a negative.
Well,
so you can't have it both ways. You got to make one or the other.
The chart reflects transparency, and that is, I would be remiss if I didn't share with you what the Kaiser offering was, rather than just saying it's a rate pass. That would be completely misleading on my part. And so that chart represents what we calculated for not only the self-funded, but what each of the fully insured are offering as well too. Personally, my recommendation is you need to build some reserves. I understand what it means to live paycheck to paycheck and what that would mean to Kaiser members getting a rate reduction. But for the overall good of the program, this is about the only way that Kaiser can participate in creating parity with our fully insured Kaiser plan and with our self-funded programs that we have as well too. So my apology for misleading on the chart, but my recommendation is that a rate pass be held. I think one other thing that comes about doing a rate pass, if Kaiser comes back next year and says it's 9%, what you'd be passing on is 4%. Rates will eventually go up again.
Okay. Further, go ahead, Senator.
You gotta stop that, dude. Paul, can you weigh in on this, the merits from our standpoint?
From a staff perspective, a year ago when we adopted the Kaiser rates that had a surcharge that went to Kaiser. The current consultant was not our consultant, but he was in the audience. And he came up to us afterwards and said, I think we missed an opportunity that for stabilization, if there was equalization, it could have come to the SJVIA, because in the past, that's what led to some of the instability, because we underestimated the migration. So my opinion on this recommendation is the same as Borden's. I think it should be a rate pass, and the pure reason is it's about stability. It's about keeping it the same. If we don't, we have estimates on migration that are as they are today. I think it might impact that potential migration, and I have concerns about that. It's difficult making that. We have a lot of our employees who are in the Kaiser plan, but in the big picture, I think that's the right thing to do. The other thing I'll say is Kaiser has been willing to partner. There was a time when Kaiser wasn't willing to talk to us about, they'd say, this is the rate, take it or leave it. This is also, I think, a benefit of Kaiser. We have a much better relationship with Kaiser than we've ever had before. And I think our consultant has helped with that. The fact that they're willing to consider something like this I think, says something about their interest in partnering with the SJVIA. So that's my recommendation.
It's the rate pass.
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, and so just some questions I have. So currently, aside from County of Fresno and County of Tulare, we have 2 or 3 other entities that are participating in the SJVIA. Is that correct?
We have 3 entities: the City of Ceres, the City of Waterford, and the City of Marysville. And I will say this, that City of Marysville is completely in our PPO, in the SJVIA PPO program, and has a little bit of Kaiser. So they are not impacted by the large PPO.
Rate pass.
City of Waterford is, I believe it's 14 employees. Unfortunately, half of them are in the EPO. They're impacted by the EPO rate adjustment for the all others.
So again, looking at, all others, 36.8%. When we look at those other cities and separate them out, do they have employees that are driving these increases when they stand alone?
Yeah, that's exactly what's shown here. As a matter of fact, the amazing thing is prior to getting the $75,000 reinsurance level, and if you looked at them at 450, their loss ratio went up, and it was 50% plus that was going to be required on the EPO. So the reinsurance and putting that program in place, 36.8 is still a very ugly renewal, but it did help them. And there are, and I want to emphasize, there are no cross subsidies between County of Tulare, County of Fresno, and the all other group. From that perspective, that was completely removed.
But they benefit from the fixed cost standpoint.
Yes.
Godfather, anything? Okay. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I think there's one that's on the table. There's no second.
There's
to
no
it yet.
second.
So
if there's no second to that motion will die, and I will entertain a new motion at this time.
What was the original motion?
It just died. It just died. So bring up something new.
Well, quick
so
question.
getting back to Member Pacheco's point, by following staff's recommendation for the rate pass, you believe that will be sufficient for purposes of our reserve and ultimate solvency?
So built into here is no reserve buildup for repayment of loans and so forth. This is just, we've made a lot of changes. The PBM, the EPO, those are big. I really believe we need 1 year, just that, stabilize this. We're fortunate that Kaiser came in at a negative. I believe a rate pass is appropriate. It helps us in our reserving and creating a very stable base so that we can turn the corner moving forward. And there, basically, I looked at it real quick. On the self-funded program, it's about a 1.2% rate increase that would add $1 million to reserves. And that's not before you today, but that's basically based off the most recent calculations of what it would take. So I believe the appropriate action is to basically the self-funded medical program as outlined in the chart, to maintain the 2017 rate for Kaiser, accept the renewal, keep the reserve as a difference. On the dental, to go ahead with the recommendation of a flat rate with 2% being burnt off of the PSR and rate holiday for January on the dental, and on the VSP taking 2%.
And for just for terminology, let's not use the word reserve when we have loans to be repaid. That seems like that's not the most
Debt satisfaction.
And I need to quibble a little bit about the VSP options, because actually, how I read this, you're recommending option 1, not option 3. I only state that because it says the 7.5% increase is merited based on the plan experience. So if we didn't want to really dip into reserves and just try to maintain status quo based upon claims history, 7.5% is warranted.
7.5% is warranted, but you're not carrying the risk.
Yeah, so
It's fully insured. VSP is carrying that risk.
But at some point in 2 years, I mean, are we creating more exposure for ourselves 2 years down the road?
What we're doing is we're buying ourselves 2 years of time, and we can look to change plan design. We can do an RFP to see is there a better opportunity for us. We have a lot of options. VSP is putting this forward in the spirit of partnership with you, and it basically buys us more time. The fact that they're willing, and they know it, they're just saying we're not going to reserve IBNR, and they're not saying that you have to pay IBNR if you leave us. That's still fully insured. That's under their contract.
Okay.
So I would like to make the motion to what he just said, and on the VSP, we're taking option 3.
Second. Okay, I have a motion from Director Worthley, a second from Director Crocker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion.
I think you were confused. If you thought I made a motion, I didn't make a motion. I was answering his question.
You're taking it back. It's dead. It's been dead, Godfather.
Right,
You understand the word dead if you're a Godfather.
It never happened.
Okay. All right.
This
So
is done.
the motion passes unanimously. We are done. That is the last item on today's agenda. I thank everyone for attending and looking over to Rhonda and Paul. Next meeting is, I think it's in October. Okay, and that will be in Fresno County. Thank you all for attending, and everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy this heat.
If I can make a comment, we might have a different location in Fresno for the next meeting because our retirement is moving, so we'll get that out to you. It'll
Okay,
either be
great.
the Fresno Board Chambers or an alternate location.
Thank you.
Knocking it down. Cap and trade.
No, I was